I'm going to call the meeting of the Manchester Planning Board for April. March. Thank goodness. March 12th to order. Roll call vote. We have Laura Tenney.
Here.
Chris Olney.
Here.
Sarah Creighton's present.
Gordon Brister.
And this meeting is being recorded. So we're waiting for Mark, but the purpose of this meeting is to prepare our articles or recommend our articles for town meeting warrant, which the select board will take up on Monday. So Mark has done, have people had a chance to look at them in the folders?
I did.
No.
Okay, that's fine. I made a couple other edits, so I think we can actually do first one here, and that's the except I renamed them. The first one, share this. Actually, can somebody who's in the audience tell me if you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. The first one is the associate member. And
do you need to have 5 members there?
nope, a quorum is 4, sorry. So the first is to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaws to provide for associate members of the planning board or take any action there too. And this is simply to add a section that we shall have 2 associate members appointed jointly by the select board and planning board, appointed for 1 year, a 1 year and a 2-year term. Thereafter, the associate member's term run for a period of 2 years. Chair of the planning board can designate associate member for the purpose of acting on special permit applications in case of absence or ability to act or conflict of interest. So I think that's what we agreed last time. So any discussion on this?
We had, toward the end, just talked about the possibility of two staggered.
I think that's what
terms,
1 and 2 year term, and thereafter the terms shall
you're
run
trying
for
to
2
get them both
years.
on board at the start.
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion? I'll take a motion to approve, recommend this to the select to include in the warrant.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. All right, here he is.
Wow, time.
We just did the associate member one.
Okay.
Jerry. You didn't have any other changes to that one, right?
Not to the associate member, no.
Right. Okay.
Print stapled it.
Which one do you want to take next?
Let's go down the agenda list.
That's
What's next?
agenda.
Oh, Shannon left.
Oh, are those?
Yeah, those are copies of everything, but leave the ADU ones there.
Okay.
Because I have updated ADU ones here.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So based on this morning's.
Mark, is what's on the what you filed or stored in our folders? Is that correct?
Except for the ADU ones.
Except for the ADU.
Yes,
Okay.
and we made some adjustments based on some discussion this morning. most of the actual elements are the same. It's just been reformatted and
You changed the name from, did you keep that change? Accessory dwelling unit standard to standard accessory
Yeah.
dwelling units and
Yeah.
large, it's just easier to say.
here are the large ones.
Solar on, and to take one and pass
Take
along.
one and pass them on, I've got more packets here, I'll show you that.
Keep that one. Which one did I give you?
Large.
Okay.
Oh, you're handing out the ADUs?
Yeah, yeah.
And listen, you thought, yeah, we don't need
Here's another packet to
The
start
other
with.
one? There are
introduction.
Okay, let's see.
This is,
Get
this
and
is
grow.
complicated as a zoning bylaws.
This
This is standard one.
it should be all in one packet. You get introduction already?
Standard one.
Standard.
I did.
Okay.
There's the standard one.
Is there any change to the floodplain one since
No,
the other day?
not since
Not since
the
Monday,
last, yeah, not since Mondays, yes, that's
but
correct.
it's good to have a copy of all. Thank you. Thank you, Shannon, if you're on.
Yeah, we already just did it.
You did that one,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Is the public extras?
I don't know, I think you gave it to me.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So did you finish discussing the accessory dwelling? Did you
No, we
take a
didn't, we just
vote?
did associate members.
I mean, did you
Yep,
take a vote?
We
or
did a
not?
unanimous.
You did.
Okay, so should we take up the standard accessory dwelling unit? So, I checked the definition against the state definition, I believe it's the same, so that's good. The strikeout has now, the parts we're deleting have been struck out, that's good. The other thought I had, Mark, was, on the insert the new table,
Mhm.
we probably in this should also include the short-term rental prohibition as part of the use table.
Well, I had that as written that as a separate article.
Yeah, because we're gonna pass over that article. We won't need to deal with that if we,
We approve this.
right?
If we added
If
to,
we, so this,
well, we would have to add the definition of short-term rental as well.
so I think we should just add it into the,
Add both of these,
into
the
that,
article.
Yeah.
Okay,
or we don't pass it over.
well, I wouldn't pass.
Well, if we don't put this into,
Well, I would either put it in
or pass over, yeah.
no, don't pass over it.
So let's not pass over it, let's just have it as a separate article so that it,
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay.
Or you can put it in, it's fine.
Well, it's not defined, it is, so, standard and long and large both have a prohibition on short-term rentals, so, and they're not defined.
But they're not defined, that's why I think
That's-
we need to insert
I think we need
into
to,
the definitions, this
Yes.
definition of short-term rental. This is the state definition,
Yeah.
this is for the.
right, and this use,
And this use line would be helpful, even though it's.
which
in-
we're done, then we can just pass over this article if the other two pass.
Okay. But,
Does that make sense?
yes, except. In the use requirements in both the standard and large, we say short-term rentals should not be permitted in any standard dwelling unit.
Yeah, so we,
So I don't know if we need and we definitely should have the definition, because we don't have the definition for short-term rental in the bylaw.
yeah,
I don't know if we need this as a separate use
it's muddies it.
line. Yeah, it's just extra work.
Okay,
If you
that
don't
sounds
need
fine.
extra,
There's, if we add the definition of the short-term rental. So the other piece of that is I looked at the state law. I think we should reference the MGL because the MGL, the regulations for accessory dwelling units say short-term rentals as defined by MGL 64G Section 1. But 64G Section 1 also defines occupancy, and it says a short-term rental normally used for sleeping and living purposes for a period of not more than 31 consecutive calendar days. So that's the piece that if we only use the state definition, or we should excerpt that portion of the Mass General laws. Does that make sense? So you've,
I use the Department of Revenue definition for short-term rent.
the what?
Department of Revenue definition for short-term rent. Is what I use.
So I think we should use the one from the MGL, which is what the regulations, and we should include, so that is, I'll read it to you, short term, I can share this. So short term. Short-term rental it's up on the screen, it's a little small.
So Sarah, you want to insert the definition or the reference to Mass General laws in
Yeah,
there?
if you look at the top line, that's what the regulations, short-term rentals as defined by MGL 64G Section 1. That's what's in the state regulations for ADUs. So then when you go to that general laws, you get these two definitions. Short-term rental, which is almost what you've got here. Owner-occupied, tenant-occupied, or non-owner-occupied property. At least one room is rented or occupant, sub-occupant, and all rented and reserved in advance. This is the key, reserved in advance. So I think you have that. So, but then further in or ahead of that in the section is short-term rentals, it's in red, normally used for sleeping and living purposes for a period of not more than 31 consecutive days. And I think that that piece of it is important, especially since our bylaw is a little fuzzy on how long a short-term rental is. And,
Yeah, it's similar, but it's written differently than
Yeah.
the DOR, because the DOR says it does not include property that was rented out to tenancies at will or
Mhm.
month to month. So that's 30 or 31 days, which is same, it's just draft different, so.
Yeah.
um,
I guess I feel like we should just use the one that's referenced in the ADU regulations, if
Okay,
you don't mind,
For clarity, it
for
makes sense.
clarity, yeah.
okay.
And we could just use that first paragraph and then say, for 31 days. Short-term rental normally used for sleeping, living purposes. Okay. All right, so that's the short-term.
Well, I did have a question. This is me being nitpicky perhaps, but under 99121, you have architectural floor plans shall be submitted for new units. Exterior elevation should be submitted for any application required in addition to any building or habitable space. An engineered site plan just shall be submitted for the application required in addition to. All that is true, but isn't that just simply, if I'm building something, I need to submit for a building permit application, which would then require all that stuff anyway. Do I need to spell it out here?
I would say it would be good to spell it out.
Because there's more that they have to do than just submit a building elevation and they have to actually submit a building permit application, which would then require all that stuff.
Right, but this is for, yes, it would, but
If it's necessary and relevant, I think it's fine.
yeah.
They'll have to do it anyway if they're gonna do some building within the building or add something to it.
Well, I guess the question is, if you're adding a small addition, do you really need a full survey plan? I'm not sure. Some towns do, some towns don't. You want to make sure there is one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elevation plans.
Right, if
A
you're
lot
just
of
doing
times
a
you
small
don't need
addition, you
those.
might not need
You
that.
might not need some of these things. And of course, if it's going to be reviewed by historic or by ZBA, you want to make sure it's specified for part of the application, or it goes to the building inspector for a permit, so.
Okay, so the ramifications of this are more than just for building permit. There are other things we need to consider. Okay,
Sarah Melish had similar comments. She thought that it was redundant with the other applicants. But I think the argument for keeping them here
Mhm.
is educational. You know, not everybody is familiar with what they need to do for building permit. This is saying, you know, I'm going to do an ADU. What are the requirements? And it puts it pretty clearly right there. So
Shouldn't it just say that it must comply with all other requirements for a building permit?
I think that's redundant.
Well, it would be redundant, but instead of saying submitting the plans,
I think Mark's point is we want to make sure there's an engineering survey.
okay.
I don't think it hurts to leave it in there, but it may be a bit redundant, but it doesn't hurt anything.
There are two pieces. One is the applicant clarity, and the other is to give the voters the confidence that we're doing what we can, that we're providing a high level of oversight to these as-of-right units. Okay.
So can I talk about 4 and 5
We're on the standard?
standard?
Yes.
So 9.1.2.14 and 5. I mean, I think it's clear they have to anyway. Right? I think maybe we should simply say that all standard accessory dwelling units shall comply with all applicable requirements of the zoning bylaw. Instead of pointing out, when I read this, it sounds like maybe they don't have to apply with anything else. These are the only conditions they have to comply with.
What's Sarah Miller's point?
And if you're thinking about education, you might say shall comply with all applicable requirements of the zoning bylaw, including.
Yeah, I think that's better. To comply with-
All applicable requirements of the zoning bylaw.
How about just all applicable requirements, that way it's general and other.
Isn't that understood with all of our regulations? That you must comply with all the towns.
It seems like it should be.
Yeah,
I think to Chris's point, we don't want to imply that it's.
partial, I get
I
that.
think early on we had talked about, Mary had wanted to make sure that it's clear that they still had to
Do
comply
floodplain.
with some of these other things because, because these are protected areas that are exempt from a lot of things. So,
I don't have a strong feeling. So Chris is suggesting add in all applicable requirements, including interest by the sea, floodplain, groundwater, and I do think there's a
Doesn't
benefit.
it say that in number 7, that you're complying with the other requirements of the zoning bylaws? Lot coverage, setbacks, dimensional requirements.
Or that maybe is to zoning bylaws and any other applicable requirements or something.
Yeah.
That's probably a better place.
Okay, that's fine.
So we're gonna add it in 7, is that okay?
Sure.
Which is it? Well, locations.
We're still talking about number 7?
That's not quite worded right, is it?
It should be in 4 because you're talking about all accessory dwelling units, whether they're in addition.
Oh, yeah,
or
this
not.
is 7 is an additions, yeah.
It just add that language.
Okay, in
to
four.
So
the-
is that correct there? All additions to accessory
I think
dwelling
it should be all
units?
additions for.
Or accessory dwelling units?
No, this is, yeah,
Yes.
4. Okay. All right, so we're gonna add applicable, adding applicable, a note about referencing applicable requirements in number 4. Then all additions for standard accessory dwelling units will comply. Okay,
In our 9.1.2.2, number 1, we're allowed to do that, even though the,
Well, we talked about the fact that it wasn't clear in the statute,
So
so
we'll
we
try it.
wanted to leave it in and
Yeah.
if they
See
want
what
to kick it out. and
Yep.
So there's another one here,
Title.
number 4,
mhm,
had to do with the separating of the unit
oh, yeah,
from the title. Now, you had crossed it
crossed it
off,
off,
but
but-
I didn't, I left it
you put it
in.
back, okay,
And I think that
we'll test it.
it's something that, I don't think the law is clear on that. I mean, it's
Okay.
intended to be accessory, so.
All right,
should we put those at the end so it won't screw up our numbering when they get started?
that's probably a really good idea.
Okay, but I don't think they'll get struck. I'll make it number.
Okay. Well, the
these
other
number
thing is that
4.
we added all those requirements into the large as well, because, and so,
Yeah,
because you don't, if they get struck in one, we want to.
keep them in the other.
Did we have the water meter or not? Did that get struck?
No, so what I did is, I said only one public water and sewer service
okay.
shall serve a lot on a standard accessory dwelling unit. So if they
Yep.
have to build a separate septic, or, they can still do that, but if they're gonna tie into the sewer, they can,
But then, yeah, they can have 2 accounts.
They can have two accounts, but they have to have one service going into the property.
Okay, great, good idea.
May I ask you a question about number 3? Shall not be leased for a period of less than 6 months. Does that conflict with your definition from the state, which was not less than 31 days?
We think that, that will also be struck in the,
The six
in the,
months will get
in
struck.
the standard.
Is it confusing to have them both? in
So I think
same
the
thing?
idea was that student housing was discouraged. Whether that's a whether we agree with that or not. That was where that came from.
I was just thinking about how the regulation was going to read if we say in one place less than 6 months, then we say in another place less than 31 days. But we're,
Oh, right. The other one is short-term rentals, the Airbnb, VRBO kinds of things.
So you are
oh, you're
allowed to
defining
do
short-term
that.
rentals,
Yeah,
not standard ADUs. Okay,
Right.
sorry, that was what I was confused about.
So they might strike the 6 months, but they might leave in the.
They will leave in the
probably
short-term.
Short-term rent.
Okay, yeah, no, I was conflating the two in one, so I get it now.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the standard ADU? We have 2 amendments to it. I'll take a motion to advance this to the, recommend to the select board to put the article concerning standard accessory dwelling units on the warrant for the April town meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Great, thank you. Okay, let's go to the large.
Oh, the-
Yeah.
Procedural, are we taking any public comments tonight? And if so, are we taking them section by section, or are we gonna wait till the end?
We kind of had to public comment the other night. I feel
Okay,
like we're,
yeah, I knew this
this
was
is
a
a administrative,
administrative meeting. Okay, I was just
thank
wondering
you.
what the process was. Thank you.
I will remind everybody, though, that, this one has a relevant issue, that we will have a public hearing on all of these, and if we need to amend things based on public comment or town council or something, we obviously reserve the right to do that. We also have posted for Monday at 6:30,
5:30.
5:30,
Just select-
and we'll do it just as Zoom.
Mhm.
We'll do it just on Zoom if we need it. We learned at the last town, that it's better to, if town council comes back and says, change this word or something, have a quick meeting, vote it properly instead of having Mark, or we could empower Mark to make those administrative changes, or we could do both. Which at the end, I suggest we empower him to make any typographical or administrative changes or changes advanced by council, but we'll get to that. So we don't have to meet on Monday, but if we need to, we're posted. Okay, large ADU, large accessory dwelling units.
And that one, sorry, did that get passed down? Okay, got it. Somebody else got it?
So I received comment from Sarah Melish that she felt that it should be 1,500 square feet. And she thought it should be in all residential districts. That's feedback. I talked to Alan, and he agreed with me that the scope of the warrant is more broad if we post it with all districts and then amend it to take out D1, D2 in general as an amendment. And given that we haven't had a lot of public comment on that one way or the other, that would give us more options if we choose to want to have those options. So I think also the scope of the warrant at 1,500, we could diminish it to 12, but going the other way is, I guess that kind of depends on your perspective. I know. I was just,
Passing it along.
Anyway, I was trying to understand how,
Yeah, I generally recommend the board put together what they feel is best to forward for the town, and then if amendments, unless there's a council points out something or something else, let those amendments forward.
Next question, Mark. Are you seeing, in your experience with other towns and ADUs, or, your research on these, to the extent that you've done any, what's a typical size?
So, most towns don't do a lot of ADUs, at least in the past.
Uh-huh.
So, for example, in Foxborough, we would do like 1 a year. It had to be similar to your bylaw, owner occupant, etc. Most were kind of in the 900 max square footage, roughly. Some might have been a little bit more, but generally they weren't that large.
Yeah.
They were, because someone had to live there as a primary unit.
Yeah.
So it was again, upstairs, garage, that kind of stuff.
I've lived in a 1,200 square foot house. I feel like that's a house, I don't feel like, 900 is clearly an accessory dwelling unit, but going higher just feels like, I know that Sarah's had a lot of experience with what's come before her.
So I want to show you, Laura.
Yeah,
This
Chris has
is,
been busy.
I've been busy.
okay,
This is a 900 square foot ADU.
okay,
This is a 1,500 square foot one, but you notice the footprint is small.
sure.
So there may
So
be
2 floors,
unintended consequences by the 1,200 square feet, you're likely to get a much even bigger one, single story.
Because you're only on one, well,
Yeah.
I lived in a 1,200 square foot, 2-story house for a long time.
Granted, but given
Yeah.
all the configurations of property and
Yeah.
housing types and so
Yeah.
forth. And actually, the other point, I think, is that what's going to limit these mostly is the size of the primary residence.
Well, I don't know about that, because if there are a lot of 3,000 and up square foot houses
There are a
in town.
lot, but I don't think they're the majority of them.
Depends on the district you're in, I think.
That certainly
Yeah.
compares to the district.
Yes.
And of course, in the districts where there are larger houses, there tend to be larger lots.
Probably true.
So what are we discussing here? Whether
the
this is-
size.
Whether this is the size or whether this is relevant at all? Sounds like, Laura, you're saying make it
Maybe.
900.
Well, I mean, the 900, the state one, that makes sense to me. Like, I don't have to debate that one. But this one, and what a large should be, and how large is an accessory dwelling unit? I mean, is the intent to build a whole nother house? And I guess that depends somewhat on your perspective of what is a house,
Oh, the house.
I think
But,
that if you are if you come from your house is large and you're downsizing,
yeah,
1,200 square feet would feel very small. But is that but it's a single family district by definition, or a single family home.
mhm,
And so you're essentially making a duplex as soon as you get, if you have an office and 2 bedrooms, which is what and a family room downstairs, you have a living room, family room. Your 1,500 has a living room, a family room, a dining room, 2 bedrooms, and an office.
mhm.
Which is,
Yeah, but it's on a smaller footprint than a 900 square foot single floor.
oh, I see what you're saying, the footprint.
Yeah, so the question is, why do we care? Why do we care? It's going to be one other household of probably 1, maybe 2 or 3 people, regardless of how big it is. So is it that we're trying to keep the lot coverage smaller, or are we having less impact on the neighborhood? What's the intent of the 1,500 or 1,200 square foot limit?
I think the thing is traditionally, you have a larger unit, you have more bedrooms, therefore you have more people,
More cars, more
more cars, more
dogs.
coming and going. If you have your standard two-bedroom, unit, that's where you get, the couple, or maybe a couple and one child, then the impact is a lot less than everybody, the neighbors, traffic, so on and so forth. So I think that's where the kind of, yes, need to allow more units in town and for some more people, but how big is, I guess that's the debate, is how much bigger do you allow?
Well, are you limiting the number of people? Or are you limiting the size and visual impact on the neighborhood? Or are you limiting the lot coverage? I mean, that's what it comes
I
down
think it's
to.
the size and the massing.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know that one or the other has one car or two, that just depends on
Depends on
people's
people,
lifestyle
right.
and age and so forth, but the massing.
I think it's the massing.
So if you have it on one level, that's pretty efficient, but it takes up a lot of the lot compared to two levels. But then when you have two levels, you gotta include a stairway and who knows what else, and that takes up space too. And so
Right. Yeah, you could have a big carriage house that has a one floor, 1,200 or 1,500 square units.
Yeah,
I see what you're doing here. I don't know that there are probably other iterations.
oh, there are
get to
countless
other of
ones,
those,
sure, of
yeah.
course.
So we could take a vote. We did have,
Well, the only other thing I would say about
Yeah.
this is that it is by special permit, these are not by right, so.
Yeah.
but
Are you feeling like the 1,500 is that where you're leaning towards? or-
Yes, I think it's more flexible, a more flexible design can result from. I don't think many of them will be 1,500 square feet, frankly, I imagine, but
Mhm.
in some cases that might be a viable, preferable outcome than a 1,200 square foot solution.
If you go 1,500 square foot, Chris, you're really encouraging a second building, not necessarily building a second floor on your garage or taking part of your interior space and converting it. You're encouraging a new building.
No, because it's a special permit, I'm not encouraging anything.
I know it, but that's
just trying to-
the reality.
If they
1,500
meet-
square
if they
feet is
meet
a
all the
lot.
standards and they have a bigger lot and setback and
Yeah.
it looks not pretty, I mean, it's likely to be approved, but you are
Right.
getting a second house.
you're getting a second
Yeah,
house.
you're getting a second house.
And my house is fairly.
And this is
good.
also in the context
Comfortable.
of a 900 square foot ADU by right in all districts.
Yeah.
So because the barrier now for a 900 square foot or 899, whatever,
Yeah,
900 square
right.
foot is lower, we may see more. And I think there is the argument that every 10 of these does add to our affordable burden. Presumably they are less expensive, but they're not going to be on the affordable.
How does it add to the affordable burden if it's all under the same title?
Because it's housing unit, for sure.
They'll count that, yeah.
Yeah, so it
Okay.
does add to our affordable burden. That doesn't necessarily, I don't see that, I mean, it's a burden, but it's
So does every single
So-
family house by right. I mean,
Exactly.
we're not doing
every
anything about
additional,
that,
right.
Yeah,
positive or
And
negative.
and every 900 square foot one's gonna
Yeah,
count as well.
however large you build it.
Right.
So I think that's immaterial. But I do
That's
feel
true.
like nearly doubling the size of an ADU is getting to a different place. I mean, that really is
It's
a
a
second
two-family.
house. Yeah.
All right, do we want to take a vote?
What would the vote be for?
1,200 or 1,500 or 1,300, 223?
Make your bids. I mean,
But we're still proposing a large unit,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
No matter what.
Yeah, and then we have which district.
and are there any, so I feel like part of this discussion is, should we be allowing two-family district? Is this a way to encourage that? I mean, is that sort of the thinking here, or? You have something
Well, that
you
is
can
kind of the
convert.
result.
Yeah.
But I think that's a result of the by right ones also. The 900 square foot unit and a 1,500
Yeah.
square foot unit, they're both,
And I don't have any, I mean, I'm not opposed to that, I think that's fine, but I just, other than flexibility, I guess I'm just trying to understand the upsides of going bigger to something that almost doubles. I mean, I could, guess I'm just feeling like accessory is smaller typically, but I'm trying to hear both sides of the
The other
story
thing
here.
I think happens, whether we like it or not, is that if you limit it to 1,200, there's still these sort of shared spaces in the, if it's truly a accessory unit, you know, the
Mhm.
sun porch or the
Sure,
the family, the rec room downstairs,
Yeah.
or those kinds of things. If it's truly a share, really an accessory use, and it's only 1,200 square feet, they'll say, but you know, mom, you can go use the basement to watch TV or set up your sewing machine or whatever. I think that would happen, and that again kind of keeps it as accessory
Mhm.
rather. Yeah.
what's Sarah Mellish's argument?
For 1,500,
Yeah,
she just thinks that I get on shares. Something we've long stopped talking about. Um, She says large ADUs should allow them in D1, D2, D3, D and G. Otherwise, you have an ADU at 900. She says, I also think that 1,200 is too small. I think it should go to 1,500 for younger families or property owners who wish to downsize to a smaller space, but not too small. Coverage requirements will restrict the size on small lots, and it'll make a difference where there is a separate structure versus a floor of a structure. She just thinks they're not.
It's funny, I have almost the opposite thing with that. The 900 is meant to be an accessory dwelling unit, necessarily smaller than your primary
Yeah.
unit, and to increase the housing stock in the area versus 1,500 square feet, which is basically encouraging
duplex.
a second house or a second household on the same lot. I don't really have
think
a,
we want this to pass. And I think people want these to be accessory. So. All right, let's take a vote. If you're in favor of 1,200, raise your hand. If you're 1,500, Sue, I think, Anne's saying 1,500. Okay, let's stick with 1,200. And the question of the districts, I think we talked about this last time. Does anybody want to change that? And I think the rationale was D2 or D1, whichever is already a two-family allowed, and general district as well, two-family. So if you have a single-family house in those districts, you've already got the right to have a two-family. So it's kind of moot. And D1, again, by having it not in D1, D2, or general, we are consistent with our current bylaw. And if you're in D1, you can have your 900 square foot accessory. So I would say we should keep it as we've proposed. We already kind of just want to, I'm responding to Sarah's comment,
yeah.
so. Okay, other comment. I think we should make the same addition to number 4 in.
yeah.
Is there, oh. Mark, do we need to add the deletions? I feel like maybe those deletions
We do.
to the large as well.
No.
mean, we're gonna assume that the
You
standard's
only
gonna
delete
pass.
it, yeah, once. I mean, if for some reason the standard ADU article, the
Doesn't pass?
50% doesn't pass,
We probably pass over,
then you pass over the large.
right, okay,
And I don't think,
yeah, and go back to the drawing board. All right, that makes sense.
I mean, if people aren't gonna
Right,
support that.
right.
Yeah, they
Okay.
might support that, but there may be more debate over large, I would expect.
Okay, so we're gonna add the same applicable, number 4, bottom of the first page, the applicable rules. Um, okay. Our current bylaw requires that they be owner occupied.
We're removing our entire,
I know, I'm just pointing out we haven't specified owner occupied
we can't,
for the large.
yeah. You want to add in?
I think it has it, I'm looking for it.
It'd be in one of the straight through.
I could be wrong.
No, I thought it was there.
Oh, yeah, it, could be wrong. Not seeing it. All right, never mind. Let's see it. Oh, yeah, number D, except that either the accessory dwelling unit or the main dwelling unit shall be occupied by the owner of the property except for temporary absence of 1 year. Is in the existing. It's a common thing that are in ADUs. I just wanted to point that out because we hadn't talked about it.
I think it's impossible to regulate.
Yeah, I think it is probably pretty impossible to regulate.
So in this case, of 1,200 square feet on item 6, only one public water and sewer service shall serve a lot on which a large accessory. So whatever water is coming into that lot, whatever sewage is going out to public, this is not having an on-site leaching field or anything like that.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's got to service the 1,500 square feet as well.
Well,
Whatever amendments I have to do, I have to make that.
Yes. I mean, if you need to put a new service line
Yeah,
in
you
because it's a really old house, that's fine. Disconnect you would get rid of the old line, tee it off to each unit. Let's say it's a detached unit.
okay. Owner occupancy, anybody want to advocate for owner occupancy? Okay, hearing any other changes to the large accessory dwelling unit? Okay, I'll take a motion to advance this large accessory dwelling unit article to the April town meeting.
So move.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Okay, great. Yep. Okay, floodplain. I don't know which one's next. Why don't we finish with the short-term rentals? Sorry. This would be done if,
No, we
already
already
did that one.
decided to
yeah,
move the definition.
but we didn't vote it. We didn't vote it. right?
Okay. Yeah, why don't you vote?
Okay, you're gonna add that short-term rental definition into the two,
Right, I would add Master Law 64G, Section 1 definition.
Yeah.
With the addition of 31 days to the
The definitions.
definition
Yeah,
section, and I will add it to the
The-
article that has the standard dwelling units, which
Yeah.
we can do because it is referenced in the standard dwelling
Yeah.
unit thing. But I will not put in this use chart.
That's fine.
because We don't,
yeah. But then we're gonna add the new definition into this standalone article.
no, we don't need the standalone.
Well, the standalone article is if the other two fail.
Oh, you still want to add
Yeah, we still have to
that?
do that. So we'll still add the new definition to that.
Okay.
And then, use table. So this would be passed over if these other two pass.
Even if the
Or
first
even
one
if the
passes.
first one passes. Yeah, or even if the first one. No, because we need it for both. Any other ADUs. So
But-
if the large does not pass.
Yeah.
I guess we have no other way to have an ADU, right? So,
So if I put the definition in to the standard
Yeah.
ADU section,
yeah,
then if large passes, it would apply to that as well.
correct.
If it doesn't pass, still applies to the standard side.
Right.
So you wouldn't need this separate thing.
Okay.
So I don't
Unless
know why you would
neither
need the separate thing, unless you wanted to apply to your current.
No point.
Well, it could be used, so if they both don't pass,
Right, then we have to have this.
you have to have this to be able to not allow short-term rentals in ADUs, because people will still be able to do ADUs.
Under
without any
9.1.
Under the applicable sections of 9.1, the things that you can't enforce, like the ownership.
Right.
Or under the state laws,
And under the state law.
You can't enforce that you have to
Right.
have someone living there.
that's right.
But if there are things in there you can enforce and you can build an ADU, this would apply.
Right, under state law, so we would definitely need
Yes,
this.
so we would need this as separate.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, so I'll take a motion with a new definition to advance the standalone short-term rental prohibition article to the warrant.
So moved.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Great, let's see, let's take an easy one. To delete the introduction to zoning. I'll take a motion to recommend that we delete the section entitled Introduction to Manchester Zoning as written, with the suggestion that it be the last zoning article that is taken up in the warrant.
So I just have a simple, stupid question here. Should we show it with lines through it,
should.
as if it's being deleted? Rather than just
yeah.
writing the word
I didn't
delete?
do that just because there's no addition here, but
Yeah.
I can add the line.
Makes it crystal clear that it's
Okay,
going
yep.
away.
That's fine.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Laura seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Not jumping, Chris.
You can jump next one.
all right. The next one, let's do floods, let's have a flood. So, let me make sure it's 10.2. There's the correct section. Yep, okay, 10.2. And so we recommend this is basically the state bylaw. And I asked Mark today how we can approve flood insurance maps that are predated or July 8th, 2025. But he said that's what the state has advised us we should adopt.
I mean, we have the map, so they have issued, and that's the date on the map, so there's no conflict.
Okay,
It's just that for the effective date of the,
okay. So we have the maps, but they are dated in advance.
So this is state mandated what we're looking
That's
at
right.
here. This is all the verbiage that they
Yeah.
provided. My only comment on this thing is that the format is a bit different than our zoning ordinances that are written right now. With A's and ones and bullets, and got a bit of a variety here. Not that that makes any difference.
We got a lot of variety.
The text is,
So-
the text is the same, but
My only comment on this, which is, I think we talked about it last meeting, actually, this really should be a general bylaw. This is about controlling ongoing use of property, not approval for building anything necessarily. There's a lot of talk about repair and storage of things and so forth, which just aren't zoning issues.
where would this go then?
Be in the general bylaw.
General
Did you
bylaw.
get a ruling from council on that?
so I've asked
3 times?
both council and the state person, and I haven't heard back, so. I
Okay,
mean, typically it is in zoning. I don't believe it has to be, but typically it is. And, you know, the zoning bylaw includes tons of use restrictions on your property as well and how you do things. And so I don't really see, and it is basically creating an overlay zone over the coastline and along the riverfront areas. So it really is creating a zoning district for and controlling the uses within that district. So it's really not any different than any other type of overlay district, whether it be watershed or a housing overlay district.
so I'm gonna suggest that when we take a motion that we give Mark the authority to change it to the general bylaws if he receives any kind of advice from council that's where it belongs. But, so the other question I have is that the officer for the inspector of buildings, and not the inspector, the town administrator, we talked about that a long time ago,
Right.
or the designee to be the floodplain administrator. But when an enforcement is by section 12.2 of the Manchester zoning, which is the inspector of buildings. Is that in conflict, or is that, and this says the office of the inspector of buildings is responsible for the enforcement of this bylaw. So that's the enforcement is the building inspector. And that's okay?
I think that's consistent.
Okay.
Yeah, at least the enforcement is consistent with the rest of the zoning
Okay,
bylaw.
just wanted to check.
It's just the first sentence. Where's the first thing you mentioned?
Administrator.
The
Administrator is
Number 3.
the town administrator or the designee.
But that's
Yeah,
the
that just
administrator,
kind of
not
kicks
the-
it up to him to
Yeah.
designate.
I think our thought was if the building inspector position was vacant, or, there was a determination that should be the Concom or the planner or somebody else. It gives us a little
Not the
Yeah.
planner.
more.
So, I mean, typically, it is the building official because they are the
Makes
one, people coming in for permits to build in the flood zone, and that's a building code for the most part.
Any other questions or comments? I'm going to take a motion to advance this article to amend the zoning bylaws relative to section 10.2 of the floodplain to the select board with the provision that the planner could make a recommendation that it be inserted in general law in the appropriate section if council were to advise that. A motion? Gordon moves.
Oh.
And
yeah,
I'm sure Chris
sorry.
seconds this. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And lastly, the site plan review applicability. Did you make any changes since last meeting?
Not to that one, no.
Because this one's administrative, we may over time add more.
So I know we talked about it at the meeting seemingly weeks ago, but it was 2 days ago, about the words for a structure to be used for any commercial use, and then the idea of the use changing from residential to commercial.
Okay, we were gonna have the other way too, right?
It is the other way now.
Right,
It's both ways.
but change of use.
Is commercial broad enough to cover every other possible use?
It is, because the use table has commercial and then it lists a whole bunch of commercial
Okay.
uses.
Okay.
So whatever industrial uses you would allow, which are pretty small, are under that table.
Okay,
You don't have a separate section for it.
okay. That's the only thing I saw in there.
Yeah, so we're gonna add in any change of use for commercial to residential, or a commercial building to residential.
It is in there.
Okay, that's 3 or more units. I think that's fine. Okay, I'll take a motion to recommend the article to amend section 12.6 relative to site plan review to the select board. And I'm gonna recommend that this one be next to last. Because if the meeting is late, important to think about the order. And Chris moves and Laura seconds, I think.
Sure.
With my arm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Okay, I see a comment, and we can go back and talk about something. iPhone has a hand raised. You wanna speak?
Hi, thank you. This is Sandy Rogers, 82 Old Essex Road. How you doing? Thank you for all the work that you're doing. When I was there last, I guess it was Monday, there were questions about adding ADUs to multifamilies, and it had me thinking, like, what is the actual definition of what an ADU is versus a multifamily? And all of the permutations of like what can transpire. And I'm not sure if in the definitions of the zoning, it's very clear what is a multifamily versus an ADU. And I think it would be very helpful to outline that in our zoning. If it's there, that's great. You can point to it in our public meetings, or I think that given the ADU that we have to add in and the confusion that might transpire with the larger ADU, I think it would be beneficial to review those definitions.
Okay, thank you. There are definitions in the zoning about dwelling, which is essentially what you're asking for: dwelling unit, dwelling single family, dwelling two family, dwelling multifamily. So they are in the definitions. But I think
But what,
you're not
but
wrong.
what is it? What is the difference between an ADU and a multifamily? Like the way that it's defined, I think you need to look at that carefully.
So an ADU, one of the important distinctions is the size limit. And these regulations under that, but and not all districts allow a two-family or a multifamily. So it's where they're allowed, it's their size, and I think you're correct that in some cases there's a blurring. But I think it's where they're allowed and how they're permitted, and in the end, they may, in some districts, they may be one and the same. Except if you're in a two-family, you can have a short-term rental, and in an ADU, you cannot. So but I think you make a good point.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you should, before you put this forward, do a complete review of those definitions. Thank you very much, and all the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Any other comments tonight? Ann? Okay. I will take a motion to adjourn with thanks to Mark for all his hard work on this. We got a lot done in a short amount of time. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Thank you. We will let you know about the Monday.
You want me, so I reserved the room, but I didn't post it. Would you like me to post it just in case?
You're all set, thank you. I think you just post it as a
Just